As the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to make a comment about something that one of my colleagues who just left the room said. You know, he made a reference to the former president of the United States and his family and their known business dealings in China and other places. You know, I found it interesting because one of the biggest differences between the Trump family and their foreign business dealings and the Biden family and their foreign business dealings is that the Trump family actually owns businesses. They actually own hotels and resorts, okay? Pretty stark difference from what we're learning, what many of us knew, and now we're actually learning as the Oversight and Judiciary Committee actually get to bring in witnesses. You know, the sad thing is, for everybody in this room, everybody in this town, everybody in this country knows that if the FBI and our DOJ had the type of damning information, hard evidence, bank records, etc., on the money laundering that this president, his family, have been up to the last couple years, and their names were Eric and Don Jr., we wouldn't even be having this hearing. You know why? They'd be in jail. And this is exactly the type of thing I was talking about, Ms. Murphy. And this is exactly why so many of your colleagues have had enough and they've become whistleblowers. Ms. Murphy, what do you think about that? So many of your colleagues have had enough. What do you think about the whistleblowers that just said, I can't do it anymore? I can't cover for the organization, the institution that I work for because I didn't swear an oath to them. I actually swore an oath to the United States and the Constitution. What do you think about that, ma'am? Do you feel like they betrayed the institution, or are you glad that they're up here?
Sir, I appreciate the question. You know, I'm proud and I'm happy that we live in a country where there's whistleblower protection acts and that people can come forward when they think things have been done incorrectly. You know, like I support the FBI. I think the FBI does amazing work.
You know, ma'am, I think they do some amazing work too. But I think we both know that its reputation is massively tarnished. And I think we're both glad that we have whistleblower provisions in this country. But I think if you weren't under oath and we weren't wearing these clothes and in this room right now and we were having a private conversation, I sure hope there's part of you that is embarrassed and disgusted with what the FBI has been up to. And I know the American people are. I mean, look at the movies growing up. You guys are in like every movie as the hero. When you were a little girl and you were watching movies growing up, did you notice that? Those cool blue jackets with the bright yellow lettering, the FBI on it. Was that pretty cool watching those movies growing up and those TV shows and now getting to work for this organization?
It's amazing to work for this organization. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Is there a part of you though that feels torn, ma'am? Like the whistleblowers that are coming up here now in droves that just say, I can't do it anymore. I didn't swear an oath to the FBI. Is there a part of you that feels torn or not at all? Ma'am, I'm asking you a serious question.
Sir, I'm very proud to work for the FBI. I think I stated that.
I know you are. That's not what I asked you, ma'am. I asked you if you feel torn.
Not at the least.
Not the slightest. Well, that's pretty sad, ma'am. That really is. And it really shows who your allegiances are to. It really does. And as somebody who served this country myself, and I come from a very proud unit, the SEAL teams, I know that my allegiances are not to NSW, Naval Special Warfare. They're not to a SEAL team. And I am glad. I am so proud that we have men and women who see their oath to this country and they said, I can't do it anymore. I'm going to go try and straighten this out so that the organization that I love can maybe, just maybe, be turned around, quit being a partisan tool, and actually protect the American people, which it clearly is not doing right now. Thank you. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields. The chair will now enter to a third round of questioning and recognizes myself for 5 minutes of questioning. I'd like to enter into the record the annual threat assessment by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, and it basically goes to the previous question that I mentioned. And let me just read malign influence operations, what this ODNI report says. It says Beijing has adjusted by redoubling its efforts to build influence at the state and local level to shift U.S. policy in China's favor because of Beijing's belief that local officials are more pliable than their federal counterparts. PRC actors have become more aggressive with their influence campaigns. It goes on to talk about, and I'll enter this into the record, it goes on to talk about other tactics, techniques, and procedures. Ms. Murphy, you mentioned the work that the FBI has done on Confucius Institutes. I'm proud to sponsor a bill and legislation that gets at the heart of Confucius Institutes. Do you believe that the CCP is using malign influence to affect outcomes of research and other academia outcomes at our universities and higher institution at universities?
Sir, so I don't know if I'd say it's to affect the outcomes, but probably more to steal the research.
Okay. On May 12, 2023, Special Counsel John Durham submitted a 300-page report to Attorney General Garland examining the FBI's investigation into alleged links between the 2016 Trump campaign and Russian efforts to interfere in the presidential election. Ms. Murphy, does your department deal with counterintelligence, specifically elections?
The Counterintelligence Division does, yes, sir.
So
But it works it along with another division that deals with election security.
So your division deals with counterintelligence and has access to election security?
So election security isn't owned by the Counterintelligence Division. There's a specific part of the FBI that deals with election security. But we work with that piece of the FBI in regards to protecting elections and obviously with DHS.
Special Counsel Durham assessed that neither U.S. law enforcement nor the intelligence community appears to have possessed any actual evidence of collusion in their holdings at the commencement of the Crossfire Hurricane investigation. And the Bureau subsequently discounted or willfully ignored material that did not support the narrative of a collusive relationship between Trump and Russia. As the Deputy Assistant Director for the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, are you familiar with this report?
I have not read that report, sir.
You have not read the Durham report?
I have not yet read the Durham report, no, sir.
I'm honestly speechless at this point in time. I'm not sure what to think of this as someone who has spent an entire career in counterintelligence. Special Counsel Durham found that the FBI moved too quickly with its investigation of the 2016 campaign and relied on uncorroborated evidence when launching its investigation. Does this concern you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
That there was a very fast pace of the investigation and that uncorroborated evidence was used when launching the investigation. Does that concern you?
So again, sir, I haven't read the Durham report, so I'm not sure, I have no knowledge of
Does this fall under the counterintelligence umbrella?
the Durham report. I'm sure portions of it do, yes, sir.
Does a suggestion or an accusation of election collusion between a foreign government and the United States or a person or an entity in the United States fall under counterintelligence?
Yes, sir.
So the alleged collusion between Mr. Trump in 2016 and Russia would have fallen under the Counterintelligence Division of the FBI?
Yes, sir.
And you have not read the Durham report?
I have not read the Durham report.
Is
no,
there
sir.
a reason? Is it not required to?
No, I just haven't had time.
Ms. Murphy, do you actively investigate counterintelligence with foreign entities around the world?
Yes, sir.
And this is a sincere question. Does election collusion worry you?
Yeah, obviously election collusion would worry me, yes, sir.
Does any malign influence to the United States worry you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I would highly recommend reading that because we spent 4 years discussing that. There was uncorroborated evidence. The Durham report specifically outlines the outcome of that. It's very disappointing to hear this. And I think this is why we have these discussions and questions. The chair's time has expired, and I now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perfect timing, because I'd like to address some of what the chairman just addressed and some of what my colleague from Arizona addressed in attacking the FBI. First, let's talk about the Durham report. I'll make it real short for you, Ms. Murphy. The Durham report seemed to fail to consider the fact that the original tip that set off the Crossfire Hurricane investigation was that Russia would be disseminating hacked emails about related that would help Donald Trump. And lo and behold, at the end of July, that's exactly what happened. So the Durham report focused solely on what was internally within the intelligence files of the FBI and did not mention the obvious corroboration that the tip turned out to be true. Second, the Durham report said that an investigation was justified to be opened. It should have just been a preliminary investigation as opposed to a full investigation. Third, the Durham report talks all about the Steele dossier, which had nothing to do with the origination of the Russia investigation and had nothing to do with the Mueller investigation. It was not relied on. That investigation, of course, led to, I believe, 6 individuals connected to the Trump campaign who were convicted, whereas the Durham report, the Durham investigation, had 1 guilty plea by someone who was referred from the Office of Inspector General and 2 acquittals on pretty pathetic charges. So let's get our facts straight about the Durham report. Second, I want to address what my colleague from Arizona was saying about the FBI whistleblowers. I was actually in that hearing last week. He was not. And what I can tell you about those individuals is separate and apart from whether they are whistleblowers or not, they were deemed by the FBI to be national security risks because one, allowed his own personal views of January 6th to affect his official duties by not turning over to his superior open source information that ultimately led a different agent to determine that a subject was actually at the Capitol committing violence on January 6th. Second, another special agent decided that he was the legal expert on what a legitimate grand jury subpoena was and was not, and refused to serve a grand jury subpoena on a witness that had been issued by the grand jury with the support of a federal prosecutor and his supervisory agent, and yet he decided that he knew best, and so he refused to do that. These people, my colleague wants to talk about being a partisan tool, I think, is what he used. Sadly, and perhaps unwittingly, the partisan tool here is someone who is Donald Trump's henchman funding these witnesses to try to diminish and undermine the FBI. And why are they trying to diminish and undermine the FBI at Donald Trump's direction and behest? Because the FBI is investigating Donald Trump. That is what we're doing here. That is why, and I see my colleague from Georgia, who I'm sure is waved onto this committee.
The committee will suspend. I would advise members that under Clause 1 of Rule 17 of the Rules of the House, they must observe the House standards of decorum and debate and conduct. They must act and speak respectfully and may not use disorderly words, unparliamentary language, such as words impugning the motives of their colleagues or words that are partially or personally offensive. Gentleman, yield back to the gentleman from New York.
Could I have my minute back since you suspended?
Yes, the time was approximately 1:15, 1:20.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So why are my colleagues trying to undermine the FBI? Why are they asking to defund the FBI? It is not because the FBI is not doing its job. It's because the FBI is doing its job. And the problem they have is that the FBI is doing its job in investigating their dear leader, Donald Trump. And if you can undermine the investigator, if you can undermine independent journalists doing investigative reporting, then you can undermine our entire system of democracy. That is the authoritarian playbook 101. You attack the democratic institutions, you attack the independent, objective individuals who provide checks and balance in a democracy, and then rather than follow the law and the rules, you can violate the law and the rules because there's no one with any credibility who can hold you in check. So do you want to know the reason why the FBI is going down in its credibility? It's because it's being attacked by people on the other side of the aisle,
Gentleman's
and
time
that
has
has to
expired.
stop. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Ms. Murphy, I also was surprised at your answer that you haven't read the Durham report. Do you consider the Durham report contents, or let me ask this, have you been briefed on the report? That was a no? Your mic sounds like it's off. Was it working?
No, sir.
There we go. So you haven't been briefed on it. Have you read even the executive summary?
No, sir.
Here's a portion. Our investigation determined that the Crossfire Hurricane investigators did not and could not corroborate any of the substantive allegations contained in the Steele reporting, nor was Steele able to produce corroboration for any of the reported allegations, even after being offered $1 million or more by the FBI for such corroboration. Further, when interviewed by the FBI in January 2017, Danchenko, he's the primary subsource, also was unable to corroborate any of the substantive allegations in the reports. That is just a sample, and I know Mr. Goldman spent a good bit of time attempting to sort of denigrate the Durham report for understandable reasons. It is devastating to the FBI. That seems to me that would be, and since it was a counterintelligence investigation, that the special counsel appointed by the Department of Justice has summarized in terms like that, that would be of grave concern to you as a deputy director of the FBI responsible for counterintelligence. Can you explain why? And you said you haven't had time to read it. It's been out since the 12th of this month. So almost, I guess, what is this, the 23rd? So 11 days. Mr. Goldman's obviously been briefed on it or read it. Many members of Congress have. Why is that not a matter of such import that you would want urgently to understand what the special counsel concluded about the work of the Counterintelligence Division in such a grave case?
Sir, if you'd like a brief on the Durham report from the Counterintelligence Division, I'm happy to take that back.
Wow. That sounds almost contemptuous. Let me ask you this then, just go back to what you've written in your submitted testimony to this committee today. And I was a little bit stuck on the first round of questioning, but let me just go back to it. It is your testimony. Let me begin at the end of paragraph, or the third page of your testimony. It says, to address, this was talking about malign influence, and again, I think you said that you don't really have much responsibility for that, but surely you must know the details behind this. You said, utilizing lessons learned since 2018, the FITF widened its aperture to confront malign foreign operations of the PRC, Iran, and other global adversaries. To address this expanding focus and wider set of adversaries and influence efforts, we have also added resources to maintain permanent surge capability on election and foreign influence threats. Can you explain the details behind that, please?
Sir, I think when we're talking about surging resources, I think it's the permanent staffing of the Foreign Intelligence Task Force.
So what does it mean to be, what's surge capability? That sounds like something that you can add people when you need it.
I think we did surge, and I think now we've made those positions permanent.
I see. So you've made there's permanent surge capability. So if you ever need to surge, you got people permanently employed to do whatever you may need to interfere with the election. How about, yeah, that's just astonishing. I'm just without words. That the FBI is unconcerned. Do you know whether anybody at the FBI has read the Durham report?
I'm sure people have read the Durham report, sir.
Can you name anybody that you know has read it?
No, sir.
Do you intend to read it?
I do intend to read it.
Does the FBI intend to undertake any changes in the way it conducts counterintelligence operations based on the Durham report?
I can't answer that, sir. I can take that question back.
I yield.